Thanks for giving me the opportunity to come along and talk. I have a confession to make. I've never opened a Revit file in my life. Don't really intend to. In fact, I've never actually opened an AutoCAD file either. I managed to kind of get this far in my career without having to do so. And I'm also not a BIM zealot, and you know, there are a few of you out there I know. In my experience, the whole BIM thing you fall into one of two categories. You're either really excited by it, or actually the whole thing turns you off. And I think we've got to maybe come up with a new language around how we describe what we're doing, because I know a lot of people, architects and clients, as soon as you mention BIM, you know, they kind of switch off. It's like too much. So I think we need a different way of communicating. For me, the thing about BIM is it's a means to an end, really. You know, it's not about the BIM, it's not about the model, it's about better buildings. But what I do know is it's a more efficient means to a better end, and that's why I'm interested in it. I don't need to explain to all of you what the benefits of a BIM approach are. A few of them are up there. This is a slide we use. I put it up because I like this image. It's quite good fun. What I'm going to cover briefly is our journey in Australia. It'd be a slightly Sydney-centric view because that's where I'm based. But we do have a regional strategy that we're leading across the ARUP offices here, and in fact we have our lead BIM modelers from Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane up the back somewhere. So we're very committed to BIM, we're very committed to the BIM-MEPAUS and the advantages that will flow from that. I'll talk a little bit about promoting collaboration. We've heard a fair amount about collaboration. That slide's probably appeared a number of times, or that word has appeared a number of times on slides already. And then a little bit about this issue of model development. How far do we go? What does it actually look like when you get a model out of a consultant? What should it look like, and how are we going to standardise around that? So starting with our BIM journey in building services, ARUP is a leading consultant in the use of BIM in structures. And of course, structures is a lot more mature, and it has been a lot more mature. And being the building services leader in the practice, I didn't really like the idea that structures kind of seemed to be ahead of us. So we kind of motivated to catch up with them, and that was one of the reasons, if I'm honest, that we were enthusiastic about it. And the first job we got involved in, which was a full-on sort of BIM job, was on Blythe Street. And well, I say it was a full-on BIM job. Certainly from the architecture it was, and I think we might hear a little bit more about that from Rod, because architecture has totally embraced BIM in the delivery of this building. We were the M&E consultants for this project. We didn't do a BIM model. In 2007, we wouldn't have known how to, frankly. Later on, the subcontractors came in, and you know, the whole thing has a BIM model there now. But from a consultant point of view, we weren't ready. But nevertheless, we were exposed to BIM processes around that project. Late 2008 was the sort of GFC. We were fortunate because we won a couple of significant projects around that time that sort of helped us through the lull and meant we didn't have to go designing school halls. And one of the projects was this Kinghorn Cancer Centre, and at the same time we won a data centre in Sydney. And we'd been playing around with sort of Revit and kind of, you know, what are we going to, how are we going to get it into our business? Should we, you know, start off trying a little job and see how we go? And I took the rather bold or reckless decision that no, we're just going to do it. We're going to jump in with both feet and we're going to get into Revit. And we picked two of the most technically complex buildings you could think of, a cancer laboratory and a data centre, and we did it. And you know, fair play to the guys and girls in the team. I'd say we probably lost about $200,000 on each of those projects. And I liked Warwick's slide earlier, where it had this sort of upslope, the investment, and then coming back down the other side to a lower cost base. And we've seen that process. And our upslope was this project and the data centre. Now that looks pretty good, doesn't it, at that scale? You'd think, wow, that's a pretty cool model. It wasn't that great. You know, it was our first go, you know, and when the contractor got hold of it, they pulled it apart, and of course, you know, it wasn't great. But But it was our first Revit project, and I actually think the job did benefit from it. We certainly benefited from the learning experience, and the outcome of that project is an absolutely fantastic building, award-winning building, and we're extremely proud of it. The next one that we were, and I'm just picking the highlights. I mean, we do everything in Revit now, and since that bold decision or reckless decision I took, we have. But this building's actually just completing in Sydney in the next month or so. 8 Chifley, it's a commercial office building, Richard Rogers with Lippman Architects, and ARUP did full multidisciplinary engineering, pretty much every single discipline, and that gave us the opportunity to work with our structural engineers, and so that you can see the level of modelling that went into that building was very impressive. So that was, again, a big learning experience for us, the opportunity to work on a multidisciplinary basis. It's still super drafting, right? There's no I in this, okay? It's just spatial coordination in 3D. This project, Westmead Millennium Institute, it's another health research laboratory project. This was a groundbreaking project for us. We'd taken on a young guy who was an intern actually, and he came along and he became aware of Revit and BIM, and he saw it as something that he was really excited about. And he's a really bright young guy. So we had him in our office as an intern for about 6 months, and we just said to him, you don't have to work on projects, just work out for us how we're going to use Revit to do design better and more efficiently. And that's what he did. So when this project came along, he gave us the opportunity to start to do some of this stuff. And what happened was that the enthusiasm and the gains that could be seen from the work that he'd done, others started to pick up on. And so we ended up with this kind of fantastic bottom-up approach to innovation. So I was at the top sort of waving a flag, not having a clue even how to open a model, saying that's where we're going, guys. And all these youngsters were coming up with this fantastic innovation. So just a bunch of things I'm going to show you that we started to do through that. So this is just a simple, all the systems are modelled right the way through, so all of the airflow rates, the sizes, all that design information sits through the model and is calculated through the model. So when we put a fan coil unit into a model, it's already preloaded with all the technical information, and then we can link that through, because we did this as a single multidisciplinary model. So the mechanical and electrical is all in the same model environment, so we're able to take the electrical information from the mechanical model and automatically load up the switchboard requirements on, by assigning them to disk boards and so on. This was just a little innovation the guys came up with. Every time we put a fan coil unit into the model in the mechanical parts of the model, it automatically creates this little dot in the electrical view of the model, and it gives you the requirements. So it's either essential or non-essential. It's a fan coil unit, 15 amp supply, and so on. And whenever that fan coil unit gets moved in the model, this little dot follows, and the electrical engineer knows. So all these problems you had in the past of trying to coordinate, the electrical engineer knows what the mechanical engineer wants. That's all covered through this process, which so it increases efficiency and reduces errors. So now we're creating panels, electrical distribution panels. We're checking cable lengths. So, for example, the old 90-metre rule on comms distances automatically can be checked through the model. All our equipment schedules now are created from the models. And the other fundamental thing that's happening in the team as a result of taking this approach is that actually it's the engineers who are doing the modelling now. Okay, so, and this is where the real efficiencies are from a design organisation. The old days where you had an engineer with a red pen and he'd mark something up and give it to a drafter, and the drafter would draft it and give it back, and it would be wrong, and he'd mark it up again. And that doesn't happen anymore. The engineer goes straight in, creates the model, and at the same time populates the model with the design information. So then at the press of a button, you generate your schedule. So that old thing you used to have to try and keep the information in the specification, the same as the schedule, the same as the drawing, that's automatically covered because everything just sits in the model. So it's kind of obvious when you think about it, but it does mean that you've fundamentally got to change the process, the workflow process, and who does what in the office. So I think at the beginning of last year we had 8 or 9 modellers in our team. We've got about 60 building services engineers in Sydney. For the last 3 months we've had 3. We had 2 others who we had on loan working with Lend-Lease, but we essentially had 1/3 of the number of modelers, and we were generating the same amount of work, and it's because the modelling was being done by our graduates and young engineers. Cost estimating. We now use these models to do our pre-tender estimates, and we found them to be far more accurate as a result of being able to pull this information out and get it costed through the model. Room data sheets was another innovation in the Westmead project. We worked with BVN architects on this, and we came up with a way of creating room data sheets that were architectural and engineering. So every room data sheet is in fact a drawing that looks like this. The information in one of those boxes, you can't quite see, is the engineering information, and one of the other boxes is the architectural information. Then you've obviously got these sort of isometric drawings and plans and wall elevations and so on. So the architect owned this, but the information that's in the engineering data was drawn from our model. So again, that old process that we used to have, which was frankly a nightmare of trying to keep room data sheets and drawings aligned, immediately that problem goes away because everything is coming from the model. And then, of course, the whole clash detection thing. Westmead was procured on a sort of design finalisation, which basically just a risk transfer thing, and it's essentially saying to the contractor, well, we're not sure that it's quite designed right, so you take the risk. So what we did was, and going back to this question of, how far is the model gone and where does the risk lie for clashes and so on, what we did was we did a coordination resolution, bunch of images like this, came up with all the things that hadn't been resolved, and we bound them into the specification. We said, we know these are issues on the model, you now know about them as you're tendering, don't come back to us and for variations, allowed to sort it all out. And that's a very transparent and open way of working. And in fact, the tender procurement process went very smoothly. The project is now on site. 48 Martin Place is a current project that we're working on. It's that building there in Martin Place. This fantastic new roof structure is going on. The building was bought by Macquarie Bank from Commonwealth Bank, and they're fitting it out completely and putting this new feature roof on. Fantastic project. There's our model. Now, the interesting thing about this is that this was not designed in a BIM environment. We simply said at the beginning of the project, look, Revit and integrating design into the model is what we do now. Whether you ask for it or not, we're going to do it. And they were like, yeah, okay, they didn't really understand, I think, what we meant. So we got sort of partway through the process, and they said, well, we want to come and have a page turn of the drawings, to see where we're up to. And the architect came along, the project manager and the client, and we said, well, I think probably the best way to start this is to just take you through our model. And they were blown away because they didn't kind of have any concept that we were doing this. So that's the real value add for us. This is just what we do now. And the benefits flow through to the client. So that's all about kind of us in a way. It's all about our process as designers to be more efficient and to have more accurate information. What I'm really passionate about, and we've heard a lot about it here, is how do we get that information flowing through the supply chain to get real benefits for the industry, for our clients. And it seems to me collaboration isn't about technology. I've sat here some of yesterday and all of today, and seen just a whole host of fantastic technology. Brilliant stuff. Very little of which I see yet actually happening on our projects. And so it seems to me the technology is running miles ahead of our ability and the skills and knowledge that we've got as people and companies and organisations to actually use that technology. So for me, promoting collaboration is about how people behave, it's about people's skills, and it's about how we set up procurement processes to allow these benefits to flow, because the technology is a done deal. And one of the things, of course, historically has happened is that we kind of set up a class system, I think, within the industry. And we need to break that all down. We need to understand we're all in this together, and if we're going to achieve these better outcomes for us all, then we're all on the same level. And it just reminded me of this video, which you may have seen before. Oh, no sound. Can we have some sound?
I look up to him because he is upper class, but I look down on him because he is lower class. I am middle class. I know my place. I look up to them both, but I don't look up to him as much as I look up to him. Because he has got innate breeding. I have got innate breeding, but I have not got any money. So sometimes I look up to him. I still look up to him, because although I have money, I am vulgar. But I'm not as vulgar as him, so I still look down on him. I know my place.
So I hope you could hear that. The consultant had innate breeding, but he didn't have any money, and the builder was vulgar, and subby knew his place. So, but my point is, you know, we're actually all in this together. And I wrote a sort of bit of an essay on this subject, which got put on the ARUP website. You can go and have a look at it if you like. It was also a version of it went out on the Fifth Estate website last week. And it was really just this idea of, you know, we need to move away from, you know, the normal Australian propensity to want to compete to actually how we collaborate. So this was put up on the ARUP website, and I was pleased to see that, you know, through social media it got a bit of coverage. 56 people, as you can see there, have shared it on LinkedIn, and 13 people have tweeted it, and somewhat bizarrely 16 people have put it on their Facebook page. And, people obviously use Facebook for a different purpose to what I do. But and here's something I wrote on there, which is you can read, but essentially it's saying that, you know, just because I'm the consultant, you know, it doesn't mean to say I know more than the subcontractors or the main contractors. And, you know, the reality is that subcontractors know a lot more about the practical challenges of actually installing commissioning systems than consultants. So, you know, it's really just putting it out there to say, you know, we know we're good at design. We know you guys are good at putting the stuff in. Let's work together. And I think we just need this sort of, the reason I'm doing this is trying to move the industry along in terms of, you know, getting to a point where we all, you know, can work better together. And probably the biggest issue is this one of procurement process. And we've got to get clients and, dare I say it, project managers understanding this process that, you know, that we need to get to be able to work in a more collaborative environment. Just one little case study. It's funny enough, it's another Coombs one, nothing like as grand as the Telstra data centre, but it was quite a nice little example because it was a building where Coombs had done the base building, and we were involved in a fit out. So they gave us their CAD duct file, which we then used converted to Revit, used to develop our fit out design, used the BIM-MEPAUS template. Coombs then won that tender for that work, and we had this workflow process going back and forth between us and them. And there's no question that the process saved time for both parties. So it's a little example. It's a nice little example, though. I think the way that the information flowed back and forward, and Warwick kindly donated us a little quote here, just highlighting that, you know, there were real benefits, and we feel the same too. So I would encourage any of you mechanical subcontractors to, you know, come on board and come down this journey with us. So finally, just wanted to touch on this question of who does what, and I think the previous speaker made reference to the fact that, you know, there does seem to be some misunderstanding out there as to what level of detail can be expected of a consultant, and that's a high risk scenario for us, and we need to educate others, clients, project managers, and so on. So we do now have this Oh, let me just cover this first. There's a little diagram I put together for we had a global conference in San Francisco within ARUP, and looking at how we take BIM MEP forward. And just to explain how I saw things moving in terms of Australia, for the guys from the rest of the world, I put this little diagram together. It's kind of obvious and self-explanatory. So looking at the different stages of a project, what happens with the model? This idea that we need to get to a single model moving through. So ARUP would own the model, concept and scheme design stage, contractor input to the model around the sort of design development and into contract documentation stage. This is where procurement is absolutely key. Because if there's no mechanism for the subcontractor to be at the table at that point, then that isn't going to happen. So we need to come up with these ways of early contractor involvement or whatever it might be, so that then the contractor can own the same model, and ultimately the model gets populated with product data and commissioning data and so on. And this little diagram down here is around value add. So the idea of how much value, as consultants, how much value are we adding to the design process and the documentation process per hour that we spend as you go through the job. And I have a very clear view that at the beginning we add a lot of value for the amount of time that we spend, and as you get more and more into the detail, you get to a point where on a lot of projects you might as well just let the subcontractor do it, because we're doing work that they're going to rework, potentially because they know how they want to put it in. So you're getting less and less value out of the consultant as you go through the process. And what we found is that kind of the market has got to this point, certainly in the commercial sector where we do an awful lot of work in Sydney, most projects we're commissioned to go about that far. 70% of the way through the design, or 80%. Nobody quite knows what that means, actually. So we kind of do what we think is right. But and this is the D&C sort of stage of design, and then the contractor goes further. In some of the more complex projects, typically like laboratories and data centres and so on, we are asked to go to full design, and even then, as I say, the Westmead was a kind of 90%, almost full design. And then the subcontractors will come on in a more sort of traditional process. But I really think this whole issue of how far the consultant goes, when the contractor gets involved, and how we make that whole thing work is key to this process, and it's driven by us having a mutual understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and a procurement process that actually allows that to flow. So we do now at least have some definitions emerging, and I know ACMA put out a paper recently which Duncan Sharp from my team was heavily involved in helping to write, which was looking at different LODs and what they mean in terms of how far you go. So LOD 100, conceptual space planning sort of stuff, clearly the consultant would do that. LOD 200, in my view, is a little bit less than a consultant would traditionally have gone to in terms of design for a fully documented design in the past. So, but we can stop that sort of 70%, 80% stage that I talked about I think is around LOD 200. So it's suitable for D&C procurement, and indeed is sufficiently developed to allow us to do all those design processes that I showed you earlier and get the benefit from that. LOD 300, though, is in my view, is beyond what a consultant would normally do. So we've got this kind of a bit of an in-between thing now, where we're kind of 200 plus, or do we call it 250, or what? Well, I think we need to kind of understand what that actually looks like in terms of a complete consultant design. So 300 is more detailed, as I say, than I believe a consultant would traditionally have done, and if a client actually asks for that, then they can expect, or ought to be expecting, a higher fee. Certainly suitable for lump sum contract procurement if a consultant does go that far, or this is the stage where a contractor, if they pick up a D&C, they move the design forward, this would be the first sort of stage. Of course, we know that 400 is for construction, so subcontractor workshop drawings and the like, and then the whole FM thing further down the track. Heard a fair amount about that idea of how do we get through to the FM stage and the sort of asset management and so on. I have to say I'm still seeing very, very few clients who have yet got their heads around what that actually means or how they do it. And in fact, some of them openly are just saying, they're saying we don't want it because we don't know what to do with it. But I'm sure it will come. Okay, so in summary, in my view, BIM in terms of MEP design is a done deal. You know, we can do all that stuff, we can do it efficiently. We simply need to upskill our engineers to be able to work in that environment. For the full benefits of BIM to be realised, we need a more collaborative industry, driven by more intelligent procurement processes. And as I say, for me, it's about people and procurement. The technology's there. And there does appear to be this emerging standard around LOD, BIM-MEPAUS, which is helping to drive convergence and ultimately, I think, benefits for all. So we're certainly totally behind that. We want to be seen to be at the forefront. We want contractors and subcontractors out in the marketplace saying that if they get an ARUP model, then it's going to be more efficient, lower tender costs and so on. Clearly, that's of value for us as well as for our clients. And that is about it. I do have Twitter. You can email me. If you sign up to Twitter, you might get something about how Tottenham are doing and my views on Tony Abbott and that sort of thing. But anyway, you're welcome to if you choose. Thank you very much.